I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Tom Doyle, who's here representing the MARLISCO project and NUI Galway. Tom has been working on the area of marine litter for some time. Although I initially met Tom, he was called the jellyfish man. He did a lot of studies on jellyfish, but he's moved on from that and does a lot on the marine litter end of things. So we're delighted to have Tom here today to speak to us about his work. Thanks, Tom.
Hello, folks, and thank you, Annabelle, for the introduction, and thank you, everybody, for coming here today. It's a great attendance. I've got a mixed, jumbled up title because Annabelle's, after tasking me with 2 jobs, she said give an introduction to marine litter and then talk about some of the results we have from the National Forum. So I'm going to try and split my talk into two components. So I'll continue on. Okay, so what is marine litter? I think everybody here, I think you're all very familiar you're all aware what marine litter is. It's clearly a stuff that we see on the beach, so everybody here has participated in beach cleans. So you're well familiar with this side here of rubbish on the beach and picking it up. But marine litter is also the stuff that we see on the surface of the water, and even the litter items we see on the seabed. And this is a lovely image taken by a diver, Ivan Donoghue, of a tin of paint on the seabed. So generally stuff that's out of sight. But it's also the microplastics, and Annabelle has covered this, but I'll just go into it a little bit more detail in terms of it's the fragmentation of larger items results in millions and millions of smaller pieces of items. But also it's from the plastic industry, the plastic pellets. If you go down to any beach and you go to the high shoreline, you'll find these little plastic pellets buried within the seaweed and in the sand. But it's also the fibres from the laundry wastewater. So our clothing, as we wash them, the fibres break off and they enter the sea through our rivers. But also the microbeads that are in our facial scrubs. Well, I guess I just want to highlight how widespread these microplastics can be. If we look at, this is research conducted by the Sea Education Association. And this is an organisation based in Woods Hole in America. And it's a wonderful program where they take undergraduate students on board this research vessel and they sail the high seas. And the students, for 6 weeks at a time, can learn about oceanography, but also they conduct these plankton trawls, or it's called a manta trawl, where this net is dragged along the surface for a set period of time. And approximately every time it's dragged along the surface, this is the type of stuff you get. So when you hear about a plastic garbage patch, it's not large items of litter that form in these jars. It's these tiny pieces of plastics or microplastics that we see all around that we see. So typically, when you throw one of these nets through the water, you'll find maybe 100 to 250 pieces of these microplastics. And to put that into a visual, here's probably the best time series or large-scale data that we have on the abundance of microplastics, certainly in the Atlantic Ocean. And what the red and each dot represents the abundance. And so you can see what you have is these large hotspots over here, where you have. So it's not near the coast where you might expect where you see these high abundances. It's actually in these ocean gyres where we get higher abundance of microplastics. And you can see the scale there on the right-hand side where it shows that you can have up to 200,000 microplastics per kilometre squared on the surface. So enormous abundance of these microplastics are in our oceans. So what are the impacts of this marine litter on our wildlife? Well, at least 663 species are known to have been affected by marine litter. 80% of these incidents have been linked with plastic. The most widely recognised problems are ingestion, swallowing, entanglement and smothering. So something like all of our sea turtle species, all of them have end up becoming or either ingesting or being entangled with marine litter. but also something like 50% of marine mammals have actually been have had negative interactions with marine litter. But you also have smothering here, which there's a picture over there on the right, which shows a plastic bag or something on top of an organism that sits on the seabed, and this organism will die because of that, because it can't feed. But there are less obvious impacts. There's the compromised ability to capture and digest food. And this is recently highlighted by a study carried out by Thompson in Plymouth University. And you're all familiar with lugworms. You go down to a beach and you see these little burrows and the cast on the surface. Well, there's a worm there. Those worms, when they ingest microplastics, it has an impact on their ability to ingest. They ingest less food when they're ingesting these microplastics, and it has an impact. It can cause inflammation on these animals. And then it can result in fewer offspring or lower reproductive output. But clearly, one of the most worrying aspects of microplastics is the fact that ingestion of microplastics can provide a pathway for transfer of harmful chemicals. And there was a recent study by Taisce et al. Where they looked at a seabird, shearwater, which is a type of bird that we have here in Irish waters. And it's shown that these birds, if you look at the toxins in their tissues, you can find that they do have toxins that are found on the microplastics in their stomach. I'm just going to play an animation just to highlight some of these sources and impacts, and hopefully I can... Ooh. This is an animation that was produced as part of the MARLISCO project, and just to highlight the sources and impacts of marine litter. Oh, probably should stop that. Oh no, what have I done? There we go. Okay, so you can see from that animation produced by Jane Lee, the impact is very real. Okay, I'm just going to move on and talk about the results from the National Marine Litter Forum, which was a MARLISCO initiative, and it was held in the Morrison Hotel in Dublin on the 4th of April this year, and there's probably many of you here who actually participated in this. With approximately 120 participants, a mixture of live audience and online participants or satellite groups, and the objective was to provide a platform for structured dialogue between the key stakeholders, relevant experts and the general public on the topic of marine litter, but the focus was on developing solutions together. And one of the key things about it was that the participants were asked to develop actions together. Okay, so we asked people to work as groups, and they were asked to submit an action that can help reduce marine litter as a team. But then after that, once we produced a list of actions, participants were also asked to vote, indicating the first, second and third preference on which action they thought was the most effective action at reducing marine litter and the most implementable action at reducing marine litter. So it's an interesting exercise. Here's a list of suggested actions that came from this forum. I won't go into detail, but you can read some of them there. So everything from a general plastic levy charge to ban plastics or microbeads, fishing for litter, and various. So there was a list that were produced from the general public and stakeholders. So this is what the people actually came up with. And when we actually looked at it, what was the actual most effective action? Well, I look at I work out. We'll start with what was the third most effective: clearer product specifications. So the groups felt that that was important when you buy a product. So as Annabelle mentioned, beat the microbeads. When you go and you can buy a product and you can tell if it has microbeads or not. It's knowing that type of information that people valued. A plastic bottle refund scheme. This is something that people felt was certainly, they think, could be an effective way at reducing the number of plastic bottles on our beaches. And then a general plastic levy charge was also was considered the most effective action at reducing marine litter. Then when we look at the most implementable action, the third preference was positive pester power. So this was interesting. It's actually where kids can pester their parents and tell them, look, we have to stop doing this or stop littering our coasts. So positive pester power was rated quite highly. Again, the plastic bottle refund scheme was put in as actually, it was second and the most effective, but it was also second on the plastic refund scheme. And the same with the general plastic levy charge, that people felt that was probably the most implementable as the most effective. So in summary, a general plastic levy was considered the most effective action at reducing marine litter. 50% of all participants actually felt that a general plastic levy. A plastic bottle refund scheme also scored very high as the most effective and most implementable. And the outcomes of this forum will be an official document that will be sent to the EU and to the national government that will outline citizens' opinions on how we should solve or certainly reduce the marine litter problem. Thank you.